In the summer of 1940, Britain stood at the edge of destruction. Nazi Germany had already crushed Poland, Belgium, Holland, and even mighty France. The Luftwaffe, Hitler's deadly air force, was preparing to bomb London into ashes. Almost everyone in Europe believed Britain would surrender. The world thought it was over. But one man refused to accept defeat: Winston Churchill. Churchill wasn't a perfect man. In fact, he had failed many times in his career. He had been thrown out of government, criticized, mocked, and even called a disaster by his own colleagues. For years, people believed his political life was finished. But when the darkest hour came, Britain turned to the very man they had once rejected. When Churchill became Prime Minister in May 1940, his first speech was not filled with false promises. He stood before Parliament and told the truth. "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." It was not a speech of comfort. It was a challenge, a call to fight. Britain was standing alone against Hitler. America had not yet entered the war. The Soviet Union had signed a pact with Germany. Britain had no strong allies, only its courage. And in those moments, Churchill's words became weapons more powerful than bombs. Night after night, German planes bombed London. Homes were reduced to rubble, families were torn apart, and the city burned under a rain of fire. This was the Blitz. Fear spread across the nation. But Churchill refused to let Britain break. He visited bombed neighborhoods, walking through smoke and ruins, speaking to ordinary people. He told them, "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall never surrender." Those words were not just speeches, they were lifelines. Behind closed doors, Churchill struggled with his own doubts. He called his depression the black dog that followed him all his life. There were nights he couldn't sleep, mornings he felt the weight of the entire nation crushing his shoulders. But he never allowed weakness to show. He knew that if the people saw him strong, they too would find strength. One of the most powerful moments came during the Battle of Britain. The German Air Force, larger and stronger, tried to destroy the Royal Air Force. The fate of the nation depended on young pilots, many only in their 20s. They fought day after day, often outnumbered, knowing that one mistake meant death. Churchill watched them from command posts and later said, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." Those few pilots became heroes, and their courage kept Britain alive. As the war dragged on, Churchill faced enormous pressure. Some advisors whispered that maybe Britain should make peace with Hitler. After all, Germany seemed unstoppable. But Churchill thundered back, "If this Long Island story of ours is to end, let it end only when each one of us lies choking in our own blood upon the ground." His defiance kept the nation united. Finally, in December 1941, a miracle happened. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, and the United States entered the war. Britain was no longer alone. Churchill crossed the Atlantic, meeting President Roosevelt, forging a powerful alliance that would change history. Still, the years ahead were brutal. Soldiers died on battlefields across Africa, Europe, and Asia. Cities were shattered. Churchill himself grew old and tired, yet he continued to inspire. He reminded people that the fight was not just for Britain, but for freedom and for the survival of civilization itself. In 1944, the Allies prepared for D-Day, the invasion of Nazi-occupied France. It was the greatest military operation in history. As thousands of ships crossed the English Channel, Churchill wanted to go with them, to stand on the front lines. Generals begged him not to, fearing his death would destroy morale. Reluctantly, he agreed to stay behind, but his spirit was with every soldier who stormed the beaches. Finally, on May 8, 1945, the war in Europe ended. Crowds filled the streets of London, cheering, crying, and singing. Britain had survived, against all odds. Against the strongest enemy the world had ever seen, they had refused to surrender. Churchill appeared before the people and declared, "This is your victory." He reminded them it was not his leadership alone, but the courage of ordinary men and women that saved the nation. Churchill's story is not just the story of a war. It is the story of resilience. A man who failed, who suffered, who carried the weight of despair, but who never gave up. His voice became the shield of a nation. His courage became the flame that kept hope alive. The lesson of Churchill's life is clear. When the world expects you to break, stand firm. When fear surrounds you, speak with courage. When defeat seems certain, refuse to surrender. Because sometimes, one person's strength is enough to inspire millions.